Okay, motivated by a deep desire to help others bring forth their best, Matt joined Providence in 2005 as an HR leader. He was later chosen to lead the HR team for the system office, along with HR leadership for several enterprise-wide transformation initiatives, including an EMR implementation, the creation of shared services functions, and the affiliation with another health system. In 2013, Matt embraced a new opportunity in leadership formation, where he has since supported, designed, facilitated, and led programs for leaders at all levels. Matt, come on up and take it away. Got your lantern? Okay.
I'm just going to grab it.
There you go.
Thank you. I'm going to step down, too. It's really an honor for me to be here with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity to just be part of your conversation. I know this is sort of the first piece that you have going, so I hope that we'll get through this intact, and then you can look forward to everything else that you have planned, including karaoke and very exciting things. And you know, go for the cash, man. The gift cards, that's exciting. As I was thinking about this work, I'd prepared some notes, and I brought my notes with me. I was sitting on the couch with my wife, and I was kind of looking through my notes. She's reading or something like that. I don't remember because I was focused. And I said to her, you know, everything I know about leadership, I can fit on one page. And she said, you're not going to do jokes, are you? And I said, no, I'm not going to do jokes. But that's a good one, so I'll lead with that. I've been in the leadership space for about 25 years as a leader, and really beginning in my HR career, and even before that, coaching leaders about how to do their best work. And what I've learned in that time is leaders are best when they're best for themselves. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means from my perspective, and we'll talk a little bit about strategies for inspiring others in the midst of what we see happening around us. I do want to say, just by way of acknowledgement, I'm not here alone. In other words, there are hundreds of years of leadership experience in this room. Hundreds of years. I stand here in front of you with hundreds of years of leadership experience that I've learned from people who have taught me, that I've learned from, who have been gracious enough to see something in me that maybe I couldn't see in myself, and who've encouraged me and helped me grow to be the very best version of myself as a leader. So lots of gratitude and lots of debt, lots of indebtedness for those folks. I'll just say this. I don't want us to take ourselves too seriously. This is leadership's an inexact body of work, and so there's always something imperfect about being a leader. So let's not take ourselves too seriously in this. And I have some. I'll share some stories. I'll have some things to say about what I think has worked well, and maybe some things that haven't worked. And then we'll spend some time in conversation, maybe with each other a little bit, and we'll wrap it up, and we'll be done in time for a break. One of the things that I would encourage as we go through this time, you see I've got slides that have lovely quotes and stuff on them. You can look at those. I may not land on a slide for very long, but I'm hoping in our time together that you hear something that strikes you, that stirs something in you, that resonates. Because when something resonates inside us, it's usually an indicator of a couple of different things. One, it's tickling us to answer something, a question maybe. Oh, I've been thinking about this. This is important. Let me pay attention to this. Another thing about resonance, if you think about a tuning fork, something on the outside creates a reverberation on the inside, is we're connecting with something that we already have inside us, and that's meaningful, so pay attention. One of the things about wisdom and wisdom traditions in general is that there's all sorts of wisdom. We find it all over the place. We just have to pay attention. We just have to listen. And so I hope in our conversation today, you hear something that's worth remembering. Because when you remember, you can recommit. You can feel grounded. You can recommit to what you are remembering. I've broken this talk up into a few different parts. The first part, we'll talk about the wilderness. The wilderness as I sort of see it today. And where I stand in my organization, I see things from a different perspective. Each of you will see our current environment from your own perspective. But I think what I'll share may resonate. We'll then spend some time talking about how we navigate as leaders in the midst of this environment. And then I'll share 3 specific strategies. Show you care, share a compelling vision, and empower others. Because when we empower others, they're more likely to bring forth their best. That's what we have planned. That's how I'll walk through it. I think I just want to skip this one. Maybe I was in a meeting a few weeks ago, and I was listening to a presentation by very smart people, always very smart people giving presentations. And she used an acronym, and it's an acronym I've never heard before, and it's VUCA. And so maybe you've heard this. Some of you, I thought I was literally the only person in the room that had no idea what she was talking about, so I had to raise my hand and say, what does that mean? And VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This is the environment. When I first started thinking about this talk, in conversation with Marie, I just made a giant list of everything I thought was going on right now. Everything from, post-pandemic reality, remote work, AI transformation, financial challenges. I mean, nothing inside healthcare, at least from my perspective, has been easy. And it's more difficult today than it was when I thought things were simple. So when I heard this sort of VUCA acronym, I thought, well, that's pretty much it. That pretty much, for me, sums it up. The environment is volatile. It is uncertain. It is complex. Someone used the word chaotic, but it is complex. The complexity is not easing. We spend a lot of time trying to think about how we simplify, and everything seems to get more complex. And then lastly, it's ambiguous. The way isn't always clear, and that's true more so today than it was pre-pandemic. So I really latched on to this idea that this concept of VUCA helps me understand what it means to be in this leadership environment today and some of the challenges that we face as leaders. VUCA has a little bit of an origin story. It came out of the 1970s into the early 1980s. It was popularized by the military and started getting a lot more public use around 1987. So I read this little piece about what that means and where it came from. And it turns out VUCA, as a concept, was birthed by Warren Bennis, who was a leader, who was one of the early thinkers around leadership science. So before it became something that the military was using to describe, kind of a post-Cold War reality, it was just part of talking about what it means to be a leader. So it's not like this is a brand new concept. And when I think about the 1970s, I don't know if I'm looking around, I'm not going to judge anybody, but I was alive in the 1970s. And I know what that was like. So I trust some of you remember the 1970s. And we look back on the 1970s, we can say, boy, if we only had it that easy now. There is something about living through a time that it's always harder when we're in the midst of it. We're going to look back 20 years from now, we're going to say, remember how we had it then? It was so easy. It just feels like, the time we lived through is a lot harder than it is when we're looking back on it. At any rate, this idea of the leadership wilderness, that it's volatile, it's uncertain, it's chaotic or complex, and it's ambiguous. It's part of the fabric. I was, a couple of years ago, and this is a story that, can you go to the next slide, please? There it is, sorry. That was my fault. Go back one. There we go. I was out kayaking, and I'm from this area, and so I just have a little kayak, and I put out in Puget Sound, and I'm paddling around, and it's a beautiful morning. And it's a little foggy off in the distance, and the visibility is great. And I just keep thinking it's going to burn off. And then it gets cool, and it doesn't burn off. And the fog just kind of rolls in, and I'm way too far out for fog. I'm about 400 yards offshore is what I guessed. So when the fog rolls in and just kind of, it just envelops you, and then you have no idea. You literally have no idea where you're going. You maybe feel the current, but now you're asking yourself, is the current going out or is it going in? Do I want to go out? Do I want to go in? There's no sound. Sound travels across water. It's pretty amazing. But when there's fog, you can't hear anything. So it was the eeriest thing. Not being able to get a sense of direction. Not being able to kind of get your bearings. If I can see, where I want to be, I can go there. It's a great the Wayne Gretzky, where the puck's going to be. Well, I can't even see the ice. And there's nothing more terrifying than being out in a kayak in the middle of fog, because you're literally, sea level, and you hear boats. They're not going to see you. They're just going to run right over you. They're not even going to know they hit you. So it's pretty terrifying. Now, I don't think the leadership environment has that kind of terror. At least I hope it doesn't. But it certainly feels to me like it has that measure of uncertainty. Where looking out, it feels like we're really kind of enveloped by the fog. And we can wait for everything to clear up. Or we're just not sure. How's it going to go? How's it going to clear? When are things going to really change significantly so that we can have this sort of more expansive horizon? We can see more. We can see further. If you've been in healthcare through the pandemic, that's one of the things that you know better than most anybody else, especially in healthcare, is that the rules that applied pre-pandemic just don't apply in the same way anymore, especially when it comes to leading people. There's this lovely quote. Thank you. There's this lovely quote by St. Thomas More. Don't give up the ship in a storm just because you can't control the winds. And I read that years and years ago, and I wrote it down because it really struck me. This is sort of the nature of leadership. How do you remain steadfast? How do you remain grounded when the way's uncertain, when you're in the storm, when everything around you is sort of this volatile reality. And you do. You find a way to do that. And nobody makes you a saint for doing it. But you do it. So I want to talk a little bit about a strategy, a practice, at least for me, that seems to work when I think about remaining grounded. Before I do that, let me say something else. Just for a deeper context, it'll help us understand what it means to be grounded, because I think we hear that phrase, you just got to be grounded. Grounded in what? Grounded how? If you ever work with electricity, you don't want to be grounded. You don't want to touch anything. You want to be grounded. Being grounded is deeply personal. You want to be grounded in something inside yourself, not outside yourself. This is not a brand new leadership lesson. About 10 years ago, I was in a room, kind of like this. It may have been this very room. And I was listening to a talk by somebody that I admire very much, Jack Mudd, who worked with Providence for many years. And Jack was saying, if you want to know what's going on in leadership, you just got to Google. And he said, you can get 3 billion responses off of Google. He used Amazon. I think I was using Google at the time. He used Amazon. He said, if you put leadership in Amazon's little search engine, you'll get 30,000 hits. So as I was thinking about that just a few days ago, I decided, well, let's just see what's happening now. You put it in now, 10 years later, it's 60,000. In Google, it's 6.5 billion hits. There isn't one answer for leadership science. There are many answers. In fact, leadership has an N of 1. Leadership flows through us. So if you want to know what kind of leader you are, just ask yourself what kind of person you are. It's that simple. Warren Bennett says becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. That's great. So who am I? I love that question. What kind of leader am I? Well, what kind of person am I? I think we think sometimes that when I go to work, somehow magically, when I step out of the car or I open the door to the office, I put on some kind of mantle and I'm a totally different person. And when I go home and I open that front door, I am no longer the CFO or the CEO or the COO or whatever. I'm just a dad or a parent or a partner or, a friend. But if you filmed yourself when you go through that door, you're still a little bit of the CEO. You're still looking around. You're still doing some of the same things. It's not that easy. It's not a mantle that you just simply take off. Your leadership is an expression of who you are. So if you want to know what kind of leader you are, you have to ask, what kind of person am I? What makes you tick? And this, I think that's such a vague question. So I ask, what gets you excited? What frustrates you? What annoys you? I think what gets you out of bed in the morning to me is also a powerful question, but it's not as specific enough. A lot of stuff gets me out of bed in the morning. The alarm clock, the dog, my wife. So it's better to pay attention to specifics. What were the high points of my week last week? Sit down, take 5 minutes, write them down. What are the high points of my week last week? What were the low points? Do that for a few weeks. Do it for a few days. You'll begin to get a sense for the things that enliven you or the things that upset you or frustrate you. Paying attention to ourselves as leaders is the price of admission for authentic leadership. You can't get to being an authentic, inspiring leader if you have no self-awareness. If you don't know who you are as a leader, it's just not going to happen. It'll feel literally like you put on this jacket, you take this jacket off. It won't be part of who you are. And there's nothing wrong with being you as a leader. There's nothing wrong with it. You will be more successful as a leader being you than you will be being somebody else. There are many leaders I admire, deeply admire, and I don't want to be them. I can't be them. I am not going to run a marathon. I am just not built for it. There are people that run marathons all the time. Amazing admiration for them. But I can't do that. It's just not how I'm built. I got to do what I can do. It's got to come from me. So, these questions, I call the inner work. We got to do the inner work. Because when the inner work is strong, the outer work is strong. If leadership is going to be an expression of who you are, and you know who you are, then there's going to be some integrity, some congruity, some consistency with what gets expressed outwardly. More importantly, you are going to know when there's a disconnect. That wasn't me. Why did I do it that way? I'm not that way. Why did I raise my voice? That's not the kind of leader I want to be. That comes from a place of understanding the kind of leader you are, or you want to be. As long as the inner work is strong, the outer work will be strong. So let me get back to this question about how we stay grounded. I'm going to just share a quick story. It's one of my favorite stories. It's a story from Parker Palmer, who writes about leadership in a very personal way. Anybody from the Midwest? Show of hands. Kansas? All right. So, could be many parts of the Midwest, but in my mind, with this story, I'm always thinking Kansas. So, in this particular story, back in the day, and I just, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it storms in places that are flat, it's pretty intense. Right? We get, here the weather it looks a certain way. I've been here long enough. I know how it looks all the time. But if I was in Kansas and it started storming, I think there should be something totally different. So if you go back years into Kansas and sort of these farm towns, if you're a farmer in Kansas, at the first sign of a blizzard, and you see it coming, at the first sign of a blizzard, what do? You take a rope and you run that rope out to your barn. Why? Because as a farmer, you've got to go out to the barn. You've got to take care of your animals, your livestock. You've got things to do. You don't just get a pass. Oh, it's a blizzard. Everything will be fine. You've got to tend to your investments. So you tie a rope to the porch and you run it out to the barn at the first sign of a blizzard. Why? Because everybody's heard a story about a farmer that got lost and died on the way out to the barn or the way back from the barn. You do not want to get lost on the way home or the way to work. You've got to tie a rope to the back porch. It's the surest way to ensure that you make it back home. So that's one story. Another version of this is a poem that comes from William Stafford, and I'll read this poem. It's William Stafford is a poet. He's from Oregon. He died, I think, close to maybe 15, 20 years ago. But just an amazing poet from the Pacific Northwest. And he wrote this poem, and it's called "The Way It Is." Not the way it should be. So it's the way. This is the way it is. This is the way it is. He says, "There's a thread you follow. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread." So the way William Stafford does it is a little bit different. But for me, it's really the same point. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. There's something about you and the reality of who you are as a leader that doesn't change. Everything around you could be changing, but there's something that's not. Taken differently, there's a rope that you can tie to the back porch so that you don't get lost. So what I'd like to do is, and I hope this is okay, but I would love for us to have a little bit of conversation. And by that I mean for you to have some conversation with each other. You're at tables, maybe you are with people you haven't met before, so take a moment to introduce yourselves. I think for the purpose of this exercise and the time we have, I would just suggest let's split the tables in half. So there could be groups of 2 or 3, or 3 and 3, or 4 and 3, but let's keep it a little bit smaller so that everybody has a chance to chat. Here's the question. What keeps you from getting lost? As a leader, personally, you can go either which way. I'm not asking you to share anything that's deeply personal. But what keeps you from getting lost? Is that a fair question? Do you want an example? I don't want to make it too easy for you. I mean, you could just say family. You could just say the people that love me. You could just say my kids. So if you're going to go with one of those 3 that I just gave you, softball, then you've got to say, what about it? What about your family keeps you from getting lost? What about your kids keeps you from getting lost? What's the thread you follow? Okay? So let's, we'll just have a little bit of conversation. We'll see where this goes, and then I'll call you back in a few minutes. Let's come back together. I know there's always a risk when I say have some conversation at your table, that'll be the end of my time, and it'll be all about your time. And I probably didn't give you nearly enough time to have the type of conversation that would be really helpful for that series of questions. I wish I could have given you a lot more time. I just think it's a great question. And it's a great question to ask the people that work for you. It's a simple story you can take with you and tell. It's not a hard story to tell. The one about the rope and the porch, everybody could probably remember that. What keeps you from getting lost? What helps you stay grounded? A great conversation. I don't know that all of us understand what that answer might look like for the people that work for us. For you to have that type of conversation with people that work for you, you've got to have a basic foundation of credibility. You can't get to that conversation if you don't have that basic foundation. So for me, there are three things. I mentioned them earlier that we need to be able to do to advance to that higher level, right? When you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're doing these lower level things a lot. But if you want to get to what really makes things, where meaning really lives for people, you've got to be able to address, you've got to earn some of the steps along the way. So the three things that I come back to, the first is you have to show you care. You have to show you care. And I don't mean the type of caring that is really about, well, I care about you as a person. How you doing? I care about you as a person. That's great. But here's a story. I worked with a manager up in Alaska years ago, and he told this story. He was just happened to tell this story. He relocated from Florida. It's about as far as you can go, right? Florida to Alaska. He relocated from Florida to Alaska, and on the day he was supposed to start as a new manager, he finds out his mother is sick, and that it's very serious, and it's probably terminal, and she's not gonna live much longer. And he shows up for work because that's the kind of person he is, and that's what he signed up for, and that's just how it goes. That's what you do. And so he goes to his manager. He says, he goes to his boss, and he says, I'm a little distracted today. Here's what's going on with my mom. I just want you to know, but I'm good and I'm ready to go. And she just stops him and she says, go be with your mom. Everything will be fine. We'll take care of everything until you get back. We'll get it all sorted out. Go be where you need to be. And he leaves, and he's with his mom for 2 weeks, and she passes. And he settles the affairs and all that stuff that is important to do with an incredible life event like that. And he comes back, and he gets started, and he is a phenomenal leader. And that experience was a defining moment for him as a new leader. He has never forgotten that, and he tells that story. And it's meant so much that he brings that level of care or concern. That's transformative care or concern. So if you want to show you care, that's what it means to care about somebody. I've worked for people that have told me they care about me, but they really didn't care about me. They cared about what I could do, when I could do it, and how quickly I could do it, and if it was up to par. So all that's wonderful. That's what it means. We're doing that sort of that stuff because that's what it is. That's work. But to care about somebody as a person, you have to really be able to make a difference that way. So that's a little bit different. Another element to showing you care. I love this quote from Carolyn Wu. Take people as you find them. Take people as they are. I don't know how many leaders I've worked with, and I myself have said, if I only had 5 Moniques on my team, we'd be knocking it out of the park. If everybody was like her, I got Jason. What's up with Jason? Maybe I should put Monique and Jason together, and she'll rub off on him, and everything will be better. This isn't how it works. Jason's not Monique, turns out. And if I'd paid more attention to who Jason was and the fact that he wasn't Monique, I might have learned something about Jason, but I didn't. And I think Jason's not better for it. That's on me. Take people as they are. That's hard to do. It's so much easier to take people as they are when you like the people. But if you don't like them, boy, that's a little more challenging. That's when it really helps for you as a leader to know that you're grounded. This isn't about you. That stuff's settled. This is about them. The last little piece I'll say, these are little strategies. Pay attention. Pay attention. Simone Weil says, attention is the purest form of generosity. When you give somebody your attention, you give them your time. That's something you can't make more of. You can't make more time. You can make more money. You cannot make more time. So when you give somebody your attention, you're giving them your time. That is a big deal. This great, pretty much one of the early founders of this whole conversation around corporate culture or company culture or organizational culture, Edgar Schein, says, if you want to do this well, then make questions the star of your relationship with people, not telling. There's a lot we do as leaders. I mean, when we manage projects, manage tasks, manage deliverables, there's a lot of telling that happens. You tell you what's going to happen. You tell you what we've got to do. I'm going to lay it out for you. Here's all the things. That's a lot of telling. Make questions the star. So those are just a few key pieces that you can do when you think about, how do I show I care? Pay attention in a meaningful way. Don't just, put something behind it. Don't just say the words, I care about you. Put something behind it. Get to know the people that you lead, right? That's all really 101, I think. So you probably all have that knowledge already. For me, it's just a good reminder. I run across leaders all the time, and I just think this is really a point that we can double down on. The second is share a compelling vision. Where are we going? Where are we going as a team, as a group, as an effort, as a project, as an organization? If you don't have that down, then you're not going to get far. There's this great quote in the story of, these are things that just kind of pop in my head. There's this great story in it's a Yogi Berra, actually. Yogi Berra and Alice in Wonderland kind of came together for this one. And it says, if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. Right? If you don't know where you're going, take any road. You'll get somewhere. You have to know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, the proverb is, without a vision, the people perish. Without a vision, the people perish. You're going to walk the desert. Work's not going to have meaning. It's not going to have a sense of deeper purpose. It's not going to connect to something that is bigger than who I am. There is something incredible when you believe that you are participating in something that is bigger than you are, that has meaning and purpose. It does something. And you want to be able to get behind that. I wrote some of these down because I thought they were really interesting. So when you think about the difference, you can Google this too, the difference between a mission statement and a vision statement, they're really very, very similar. I think a lot of us conflate the two. But in the simplest form, a mission statement really is about what we're doing right now. A vision statement is what it's going to look like 10 years from now, or however far out. So if you think about, as I think about it, another way I talk about it is, it's the so that of the organization. So I'm going to give you some, I don't know if you know your own mission statement, your own vision statement, but this one is, so that we become Earth's most customer-centric company. Anybody know who that is? Amazon. So that we become a world without waste. I was impressed by that vision. There is a company that is committed to becoming a world without waste. It's a company called United by Blue. Never heard of them. Have now. So have you. Another one. So that we do everything possible to expand human potential. I didn't see this one coming. We do everything possible to expand human potential. That's Nike. It's not about making the cool clothes and putting cool shoes on people's feet. We want to expand human potential. Wow. You begin to think about your vision statement, it really transforms how you see what you do. So from that perspective, I think it's really important. I'm not going to ask you to share yours. Providence has a vision statement. It's health for a better world. For me, it has that same effect. Health for a better world. Okay. Strategy, that was strategy 2. Number 3, empower others. And I think this one, for me, is probably the one I spend the most time with as a leader. Empower others, and they will bring forth their best. Here's what I mean by that. We spend roughly two-thirds of our waking life in work. 2/3. So if we're not connected to the work we do, if work doesn't have a sense of meaning and purpose for us, that's rough. 2/3 of your waking life. And what are you going to do as an employee? You're going to start chasing that meaning. I want something more meaningful. This is just, what am I doing? By the way, McDonald's vision statement is to create feel-good moments. It's a little bit longer than that. But if you can frame flipping burgers into feel-good moments for everyone, anywhere, you can rally people around something as intense and beautiful as that. So empowering others is very similar. It's really about how do we connect as a leader, meaning and purpose. I think we often think about empowering others is really like encouraging them, helping them to grow, sending them out. The straightforward way from my perspective to begin to empower others is to help them understand the deeper meaning of their work. When people understand the deeper meaning of their work, the work itself is transformed. The work is transformed. Now, I'll be the first to admit, work is work is work. That's why they call it work. It's work. It's not meant to be play. There's a word for it. Work. And you go to work because you get a paycheck, right? You advance your career. You're able to do something that you believe in, whatever those reasons are. They may be different for different people. But if we say to people, you're working and you get paid for it, so why do we have a problem? I remember when people would talk like that. We probably don't talk like that anymore. There have been enough generational changes that we've seen that that's not going to be a helpful conversation, especially for younger workers. And if you haven't seen that, try it out. You can see how it goes. Don't blame me. That's tough. We've got to see this a little bit differently. And when people can connect meaning and purpose to their work, it transforms the work. And if it transforms the work, it transforms the worker. So here's a story. This is a letter that, these letters kind of come in. You're in healthcare and you get letters from people all the time that kind of come in and they say, hey, thanks a lot. So this is a hey, thanks a lot letter. Dear Cassandra, thank you for all your help and encouragement. I want you to know that you were a blessing to me and my wife during our cancer journey. Sincerely, yada, yada. What do you think Cassandra does? Just shout out some. What do you think Cassandra does to get a thank you letter? Nurse? What's that? Yeah, they showed care. What else? What other types of jobs? No one? Dietary. Caseworker. Financial counselor. She's a financial counselor. Dietary is a good guess. I have a very similar letter from an EVS worker. The most important part of my stay was when, I can't remember her name, let's say Regina, came into my room to clean. And we would spend a few minutes talking about our dogs. The most important part of my stay was not my doctor, not my nurse, but the person who cleaned my room. The person that got the letter, thanks for help. You were a blessing on my cancer journey. Not the oncologist. The financial counselor. I'm like, wow, I want to meet that financial counselor. And I did. And I talked to her. And she's great. She's great. But that letter meant so much to her. Because now, when somebody calls her, she has this opportunity to be a blessing to somebody else in the midst of an incredibly challenging time. That's the deeper meaning of work. That's what we're trying to get at when we talk about the deeper meaning of work. I'm going to give you an example about how to do it. And this probably won't work in every situation, but when I was at Swedish, I was, on my way, going someplace in the building, and I'm by the elevators, and when they're working, can we relate to that? That was the revenue joke. Can't fix the elevators? Okay. Gentleman was pushing a big cart, a lot of heavy boxes on the cart, and I'm looking at it, it's like, well, John, where are you headed? And he says to me, I'm going up to the roof. He's the facilities engineer. I'm going up to the roof. I said, what for? And he said, well, the filters on the air handling units need to be replaced. I said, okay, well, why are you going to go do that? Well, it's just that time. And so now I start thinking, well, why are you going to do that? Well, because, we want to keep the warranty. If we don't do it, we might void the warranty. But why are you going to do that, John? Well, it's what I have to do. It's on my list for the day. He's starting to get annoyed. And I don't blame him. But why, John? Why are you going to do that? What happens if you don't do that? Well, if I don't do it, besides the warranty, the air's not going to get cleaned. Well, what happens when the air doesn't get cleaned? Well, people could get sick. And then what happens? Well, they don't go home. So what you're doing today is you're going up on the roof and you're going to change these filters so people can stay healthier and they can go home sooner and be with their loved ones. And that's not just about the people who are in the hospital, it's about the people who work in the hospital too. And I'm like, that's the meaning. That's the deeper meaning of a task. John spent the day changing those filters, thinking about all the people he was helping. I love that story. And it's important. We want to be able to make those connections. There was thank you. There was a study that was published by Gallup in fall of 2023 that said the connection that people have between work and meaning is declining. And it was especially true for remote workers, especially true. So remote workers saw a decline. And I was reading these different responses that people had offered about this research, and some were just saying, well, that's just how it is. That's just the world we live in. And I just don't think that's true. There's always going to be work. And as long as there's work, where you spend 2/3 of your waking life, where you grow as a person, where you contribute your gifts and talents, in some fashion to the enterprise, to the vision, to the community, there's going to be deeper meaning in work. There's no reason for those numbers to go down. And I think this is one of the most important things that we can do as leaders, is to help people connect the dots between the task they do and the deeper meaning of that work. So I don't know, this time has gone by really fast, and I feel like I've talked a lot, and I don't know if there's something that you heard that you found particularly helpful or meaningful. I think, remember I said, pay attention, maybe you'll hear something that's meaningful or helpful for you. But if you did, write it down. Write it down. There's these slides, some of them are wonderful pictures from amateur photographers. They're all amateur photographer pictures, and they all have quotes on them. And so maybe there's a particular quote that you liked, print it out. Put it in your office. Use it as something that reminds you of something that you feel was important for you to hear in the time that we had. And I'll close with this. I was in very early in my leadership career, I attended this little conference, and I can't remember what it was called, and I wish I did, and I wish I remembered a lot more about it, but this is the thing that stuck with me, this particular quote. Good leaders help their people become better employees. Good leaders help their people become better employees. That's great. We all want to be a good leader then. Great leaders help their employees become better people. And if you don't think that's true, I would encourage you to think differently about it. Go back to this idea. Think about the fact that people are investing the time that they have in life in work. Help them connect some of those dots. Great leaders help their employees become better people. I just think that's just incredible. Okay. This is the last thing I'll say. When we think about what it means to be an inspiring leader, right? Because we know inspired leaders inspire others, inspired people inspire others. You can name the people that inspired you. You can. If you think about it, you can write their names down, you can reach out to them, you can thank them. There are people who have inspired you. It doesn't take much to be an inspiring person. You don't have to be Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela to be an inspiring person. You have to be authentic. You have to know what makes you tick, what grounds you, what you hold on to. And you have to be able to show people that you care and enroll them in something that is bigger than they are, and they will feel inspired. So with that, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your conversation. I'm really grateful for the time we've had together, and that's that. Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much.